History has a way of leaving us utterly bewildered, placing pieces of the past where they simply shouldn't be. Imagine stumbling upon an ancient Roman coin buried deep in the soil of North America, or uncovering a Viking sword halfway across the world in the sands of the Middle East. These aren't just random accidents, they're mysteries that defy logic, challenging everything we think we know about how the world was connected centuries ago. These artifacts, lost and found thousands of miles from where they belong, whisper stories of forgotten journeys, improbable voyages, and secrets buried by time. And today, we're diving into some of the most baffling cases, each one a puzzle waiting to be solved. What if I told you that some of these objects weren't just misplaced but seemingly teleported across continents? Take the main penny, for example, a Norse coin dating back to the 11th century, discovered not in Scandinavia but in a Native American settlement in the United States. How did it get there? Was it evidence of Viking explorers venturing further than we ever imagined, or just a fluke of trade networks stretching farther than history books recorded? Then there's the eerie case of the Olmec-style artifacts found in the American Southwest, bearing striking resemblances to Mesoamerican carvings. Did ancient cultures exchange ideas across impossible distances, or is there another explanation hidden beneath the surface? Every misplaced artifact is a breadcrumb leading us down a trail of questions, some with answers and others that may never be fully unraveled. These discoveries force us to rethink what we know about ancient travel, trade, and communication. Were our ancestors more connected than we give them credit for? Did lost civilizations possess knowledge or routes that history has since erased? As we explore these 25 artifacts found far from home, you'll start to see history not as a fixed timeline, but as a web of strange, unexpected connections. So let's begin this journey into the unknown, where every object has a story to tell, and some of those stories might just rewrite the past as we know it. Buried beneath the soil of a Native American shell midden in Maine lay a tiny copper coin no bigger than a fingernail that would send shockwaves through our understanding of history. Known as the Maine penny, this artifact isn't just a random curiosity. It's a genuine Norse coin minted in Norway during the reign of King Olaf Kyrre, roughly between 1067 and 1093. For centuries, archaeologists assumed the Vikings' voyages to North America were limited to fleeting visits to Newfoundland, as evidenced by the famous settlement at Elance Oaks Meadows. But this coin, found hundreds of miles further south, raises a tantalizing question. Did the Norse venture deeper into the continent than we ever realized? One theory suggests the coin arrived through trade networks spanning vast distances. Indigenous peoples along the Atlantic coast were known to exchange goods over thousands of miles, passing objects like copper tools and shells through intricate webs of contact. Could the Maine penny have traveled hand to hand, moving slowly from Norse settlers in Canada to Wabanaki communities in Maine over generations? Or is there a more daring explanation, that Viking explorers sailed further down the coast, perhaps even establishing temporary camps or trade outposts long lost to time? Then there's the possibility of a hoax. Skeptics point out the coin was discovered by amateur archaeologists in the 1950s, not in a controlled excavation. Could it have been planted, yet scientific analysis confirms its authenticity, and its corrosion patterns match the chemistry of the Maine soil? Even stranger, this isn't the only Norse artifact found far out of place. A spindle whorl, typically used in Viking textile work, was uncovered in Canada's Arctic, hinting at a broader, and still poorly understood Norse presence. Whatever its journey, the Maine penny forces us to reconsider the quiet, untold connections between distant cultures. It's a reminder that history isn't just written in grand battles or famous explorers, but in small, overlooked objects that refuse to fit neatly into the past we think we know. Deep in the heart of Mexico, buried beneath the ruins of a pre-Columbian city, archaeologists uncovered an artifact that shouldn't exist, a small terracotta head with unmistakably Roman features. Known as the Takaxik head, this curious object was found in a burial site dating back to between 1476 and 1510, long before Europeans officially reached the Americas. With its neatly trimmed beard and classic Greco-Roman hairstyle, the sculpture stands out like a misplaced relic from another world. How could an artifact so clearly reminiscent of ancient Mediterranean artistry end up in a Mesoamerican grave? The discovery sent scholars scrambling for answers. Some argue it's undeniable proof of transoceanic contact between Rome and the Americas centuries before Columbus. Could Roman ships have drifted off course, carried by currents across the Atlantic? There's precedent for such accidental voyages. Historical records describe Roman vessels lost at sea, and experiments have shown that ancient boats could survive the journey with the right conditions. Others propose a more deliberate connection, pointing to legendary accounts of distant lands mentioned in Roman texts. Could traders or explorers have made the treacherous crossing, leaving behind traces of their presence in the New World? But not everyone is convinced. Skeptics suggest the head might be a colonial-era hoax, perhaps planted by Spanish settlers or even a 20th century prankster. After all, it was unearthed in the 1930s by an archaeologist known for controversial finds. Yet scientific analysis complicates that theory. The head's patina and mineral deposits match other authentic artifacts from the same burial layer, and its style aligns with 2nd or 3rd century Roman craftsmanship. Even more puzzling, similar Roman-style artifacts have turned up elsewhere in the Americas, including a controversial figurine found in Tennessee. The debate rages on, with each side offering compelling arguments. What's certain is that the Takaxik head challenges our assumptions about the boundaries of ancient exploration. Whether it's evidence of forgotten voyages, an elaborate hoax, or something even stranger, this small terracotta face reminds us that history's map may still have uncharted edges waiting to be discovered. High on the stone walls of Great Zimbabwe, an ancient city rising from the grasslands of southern Africa, perch mysterious soapstone carvings that defy conventional history. 8 birds, each with a presence so commanding they became national symbols. But what makes these artifacts truly bewildering isn't just their craftsmanship. It's their uncanny resemblance to designs from the Middle East, particularly the falcon motifs of ancient Mesopotamia and Arabia. These Zimbabwe birds, dating back to between the 11th and 15th centuries, shouldn't, by outdated historical narratives, exist in such a form. For generations, Western scholars insisted Africa's pre-colonial societies were isolated, cut off from the wider world. Yet these carvings whisper a very different story, one of transcontinental trade, shared artistry, and connections stretching far beyond the limits of old textbooks. Take a closer look at the bird's features: the curved beaks, the regal posture, even the scales carved into their bases mirroring Mesopotamian depictions of the god Ningishzida. This isn't coincidence, it's evidence of a cultural exchange that spanned oceans and deserts. Great Zimbabwe was no backwater. It was the heart of a thriving empire, rich in gold and ivory, trading with merchants from as far away as Persia, India, and China. Arabic coins, Chinese ceramics, and glass beads from Egypt have all been unearthed in the city's ruins. The birds, then, might be more than decorations. They could be emblems of diplomacy, symbols linking Zimbabwe's rulers to the powerful networks of the Indian Ocean world. But here's where the mystery deepens. No one knows exactly how these artistic influences traveled. Did African artisans encounter Middle Eastern designs through traders who carried textiles, metalwork, or even illustrated manuscripts? Or could the birds reflect a deeper, older connection, a shared cultural memory stretching back to a time when ancient African and Mesopotamian civilizations might have interacted indirectly through intermediaries? Some researchers even speculate about the possibility of African travelers venturing north, bringing back ideas and inspirations. The Zimbabwe birds force us to confront an uncomfortable truth. The history we've been taught is often fragmented, shaped by biases that dismissed Africa's global ties. These carvings aren't just art, they're a challenge to rewrite the narrative, to see the continent not as a passive recipient of foreign influence, but as an active participant in a connected medieval world. And with every new discovery, the walls of Great Zimbabwe seem to whisper secrets we're only beginning to hear. In the dense jungles of Central America, archaeologists made a discovery that turned conventional history on its head. A collection of intricately carved jade masks bearing features strikingly similar to Chinese artistic traditions. These Olmec artifacts, dating back to around 1200 BCE, showcased delicate, high-cheekboned faces with almond-shaped eyes, motifs that seem to leap straight from ancient East Asian art. How could two civilizations separated by the vast Pacific Ocean share such uncanny artistic parallels? The answer might lie in forgotten voyages across the world's largest body of water, challenging the long-held belief that pre-Columbian societies were completely isolated from the rest of the globe. Jade held sacred significance for both the Olmec and ancient Chinese cultures, revered for its beauty and spiritual properties. The Olmecs, often called Mesoamerica's mother culture, sourced their jade from distant mines in Guatemala, painstakingly carving it into ceremonial objects. But the stylistic similarities in these masks go beyond material. The flowing, almost ethereal human forms mirror the craftsmanship of Shang dynasty artisans in China. Some scholars argue this isn't coincidence but evidence of indirect contact, perhaps through coastal traders navigating Pacific currents. Experimental voyages like the Kon-Tiki expedition in the 20th century proved such journeys were possible with ancient boat-building techniques. Could fishermen or merchants have drifted between continents, carrying artistic ideas along with their cargo? Others propose a different angle: convergent cultural evolution. Perhaps both societies independently developed similar styles to represent shared human experiences or spiritual concepts. Yet the precision of the parallels, from the exaggerated earlobes to the symbolic use of jade, makes this theory harder to swallow. Even more tantalizing are linguistic clues. The Olmec word for jade, Roman 11, echoes the Chinese term yu, though direct links remain speculative. The debate grows even more complex with the discovery of Olmec-style artifacts in the American Southwest and Chinese coins found in pre-Columbian Mexican sites. Were these objects carried by adventurous traders, or do they point to a broader network of exchange we've yet to fully uncover? The Olmec jade masks don't just sit quietly in museum cases. They demand we reconsider the boldness of ancient explorers and the invisible threads that may have connected worlds we once thought were strangers. In a quiet Minnesota field in 1898, a Swedish immigrant named Olof Oman made a discovery that would ignite a firestorm in the world of archaeology: a 200-pound slab of greywacke stone, its face carved with cryptic symbols known as runes. The Kensington runestone, as it came to be called, appeared to tell a harrowing tale. A group of Norse explorers journeying westward in the year 1362, far beyond any known Viking settlement. According to the inscription, these travelers faced a brutal attack, leaving 10 men, red with blood and dead. If genuine, this artifact would rewrite history, proving Vikings ventured deep into North America over a century before Columbus. But the truth has been anything but clear. From the moment it surfaced, the runestone faced immediate skepticism. Critics pointed to glaring inconsistencies, like the runes mixing medieval and older forms, as well as linguistic oddities in the Old Norse wording. Some scholars argued the inscription included words and grammatical structures that wouldn't have existed in the 14th century, suggesting a much later fabrication. Even the stone's discovery raised eyebrows. Oman claimed he found it wrapped in the roots of a tree, yet no other Norse artifacts were nearby. Could this be an elaborate hoax, perhaps crafted by a homesick Scandinavian settler with a knack for runes? But defenders of the stone have fought just as passionately. Geologists have analyzed its weathering patterns, concluding the carvings show centuries of erosion, not fresh tool marks. Some linguists argue the so-called mistakes in the runes could reflect regional dialects or the scribes' imperfect literacy. Then there's the curious fact that certain rune forms match those found in remote parts of Sweden, unlikely knowledge for a 19th century farmer. Even more intriguing, a handful of other anomalous Norse-style artifacts like the broken sword found near the runestone site hint at something deeper at play. The debate has raged for over a century, with academic factions digging in their heels. Modern technology has only added fuel to the fire. Scans reveal the carvings extend beneath the stone's weathered surface, making forgery harder to explain. Yet without corroborating evidence of Viking campsite, tools, or skeletal remains, the Kensington runestone remains suspended between history and myth. Whether it's a medieval distress call or an immigrant's clever prank, this weathered slab forces us to confront how easily the past can hide its secrets and how fiercely we cling to the stories we want to believe. Nestled in the highlands of Bolivia near Lake Titicaca, a peculiar ceramic vessel sits at the center of one of archaeology's most heated debates. Known as the Fuente Magna bowl, this artifact looks as though it was plucked straight from ancient Mesopotamia, yet it was found thousands of miles away, in a region where such objects should never exist. Decorated with intricate carvings resembling Sumerian cuneiform and motifs echoing early Mesopotamian art, the bowl defies everything we thought we knew about the boundaries of ancient civilizations. How did a piece of pottery, so clearly linked to the world's first urban cultures, end up in the heart of South America? The bowl's discovery in the 1950s was met with instant controversy. Its surface bears two distinct writing systems. One side features Proto-Sumerian symbols, while the other showcases a script similar to the ancient writing of the Harappan civilization from the Indus Valley. Linguists who have studied the inscriptions claim some characters match known Sumerian signs for words like entrust and goddess, while others remain undeciphered. If authentic, the Fuente Magna bowl suggests a connection between Mesopotamia and pre-Columbian cultures over 4,000 years ago, long before European contact. But how could such an interaction have occurred? Supporters of the bowl's legitimacy point to the growing body of evidence for transoceanic contact in antiquity. The sweet potato, native to the Americas, was cultivated in Polynesia before Columbus. Ancient Egyptian mummies have been found with traces of tobacco and coca, plants exclusive to the New World. Could the Fuente Magna bowl be another piece of this puzzle? Some theorists propose that Sumerian traders, renowned seafarers who ventured as far as the Indus Valley, might have crossed the Atlantic or Pacific, carried by currents or guided by stars. Others speculate the bowl could be evidence of a shared ancestral culture, a lost civilization whose influence spanned continents before fading into myth. Skeptics, however, dismiss the bowl as an elaborate hoax or misidentification. They argue the cuneiform is crude and inconsistent with established scripts, possibly accidental scratches or later additions. The bowl's provenance is also murky. It was reportedly found by a local farmer, not excavated by archaeologists, leaving its original context unclear. Even more puzzling, no other Mesopotamian artifacts have been discovered in the region, making the Fuente Magna bowl a lonely anomaly. Yet recent studies add new layers to the mystery. Geochemical analysis reveals the clay matches local Bolivian sources, meaning the bowl was likely made in South America, not imported. This raises an even wilder possibility. Could Sumerian or Mesopotamian travelers have reached Bolivia, sharing their writing system with local artisans who then adapted it? Or does the bowl reflect an independent invention of writing, a fluke of parallel cultural evolution? The Fuente Magna bowl refuses to fit neatly into any textbook. Whether it's proof of a forgotten global network or simply an enigmatic artifact misread by hopeful researchers, it challenges us to reconsider the ingenuity and reach of ancient peoples. In a world where history is often written by the victors, objects like this whisper of alternate narratives, ones where the map of human connection might be far vaster than we ever imagined. Buried in the dusty hills of Acambaro, Mexico, lies a collection so bizarre it could have been ripped from the pages of a fantasy novel. 32,000 clay figurines, many depicting humans interacting with creatures that look unmistakably like dinosaurs. Discovered in the 1940s by a local merchant named Waldemar Jolsrud, these Acambaro figures have ignited one of the most persistent controversies in archaeology. If genuine, they would shatter our understanding of history, suggesting ancient civilizations coexisted with, or at least knew of, creatures that went extinct 65 million years ago. But the truth behind these artifacts is anything but straightforward, tangled in a web of skepticism, sensational claims, and unanswered questions. Jolsrud insisted he stumbled upon the figures accidentally while horseback riding near Cerro del Toro, where erosion had exposed fragments of pottery. What followed was a frenzied excavation, with local farmers paid to dig up thousands of these strange statuettes. Some show humans riding or battling reptilian beasts with spiked tails and elongated necks, while others resemble known dinosaur species like Triceratops or Stegosaurus. Proponents of their authenticity argue these details are too precise to be coincidental, pointing to the figurines' weathered patina and mineral deposits as evidence of ancient origins. Could they be relics of a lost civilization with knowledge of prehistoric life, preserved in myth or fossilized bones? Yet the scientific community remains overwhelmingly skeptical. For starters, the figures lack any archaeological context. No ancient settlement layers, tools, or other artifacts were found alongside them. Radiocarbon dating of organic material in the clay has yielded inconsistent results, with some tests suggesting modern origins. Even more damning, the style of the figurines clashes with known Mesoamerican art traditions. The dinosaurs are rendered with a dramatic, almost cinematic flair, unlike the stylized representations typical of pre-Columbian cultures. Critics argue they resemble mid-20th century interpretations of dinosaurs, influenced by pop culture like museum reconstructions or early Hollywood films. Then there's the troubling question of motive. Jolsrud, a hardware merchant with no formal training, had a financial stake in the figures' notoriety, selling them to collectors and tourists. Some researchers allege he may have commissioned local artisans to create the pieces, capitalizing on post-war fascination with dinosaurs and ancient mysteries. The sheer volume of figurines, over 30,000, also raises eyebrows. No other site in the Americas has yielded such a massive, singular collection of anomalous art. But the mystery refuses to die. A handful of independent researchers have defended the figures, citing microscopic analysis that shows aging patterns consistent with centuries of burial. Others propose alternative theories. Could the dinosaurs actually represent stylized versions of living reptiles like iguanas or crocodiles, exaggerated over time through artistic license? Or might they symbolize mythical creatures from oral traditions now lost to history? The Acambaro figures stand as a cautionary tale about the allure of rewriting history and the fine line between discovery and deception. Whether they are elaborate hoaxes or misunderstood relics, they force us to grapple with how easily our hunger for the extraordinary can cloud the rigors of evidence. In the end, these enigmatic clay creatures remind us that some mysteries persist not because they're unsolvable, but because we so desperately want them to be real. In the sun-drenched soil of Okinawa, Japan, archaeologists made a discovery that sent shockwaves through the historical community. Ancient Roman coins, minted centuries before Japan's first recorded contact with Europe. These bronze and copper pieces, dating back to the 3rd and 4th centuries, bear the weathered profiles of emperors like Constantine the Great, their edges worn smooth by time. How did these coins, stamped in the heart of the Roman Empire, end up nearly 6,000 miles away in the Ryukyu Islands? The answer might lie in the sprawling, interconnected trade routes that stitched together the ancient world, routes far more extensive than we once believed. Silk Road trade networks stretching from Rome to China weren't just pathways for silk and spices. They were highways of cultural exchange where goods and ideas traveled farther than their creators ever imagined. Roman merchants traded glassware and gold for Chinese silks, while Central Asian middlemen carried everything from Persian silver to Indian gemstones. Coins, often valued more for their metal content than their monetary worth, could have changed hands countless times along this route. A Roman denarius might have been melted down in India, only to be reminted as a cushion coin, then traded again until it eventually reached East Asia. But Okinawa's coins show no signs of reworking. They're strikingly intact, suggesting they might have been carried directly as curiosities or talismans rather than currency. There's another tantalizing possibility: maritime trade. Recent research reveals ancient sailors were far more adventurous than once assumed. Chinese records mention dakin, their name for Rome, and describe envoys from the West bearing gifts. Could Roman ships, or more likely, Roman goods aboard Indian or Arab vessels, have sailed the monsoon winds to Southeast Asia, eventually reaching Japan through island-hopping traders? The Okinawa coins were found near Katsuran Castle, a 15th-century trading hub linked to the Ryukyu Kingdom, known for its maritime prowess. This wasn't some isolated find, it was a node in a global network. Yet skeptics question whether the coins truly traveled in antiquity. Could they have been brought by later European traders or even Portuguese missionaries in the 16th century? The excavation context suggests otherwise. The coins were buried in layers dating centuries before European contact. Moreover, similar Roman artifacts have turned up in unexpected places, like a Roman-era glass bowl unearthed in a 5th-century Japanese tomb. These finds hint at a world where objects and people moved in ways we're only beginning to map. The Okinawa coins don't just rewrite trade history, they dissolve the artificial barriers we've built between East and West. They whisper of a time when a Roman emperor's face could gaze across the seas, landing in the hands of someone who might never have known his name, but kept his likeness all the same. Digging through the back dirt of 19th-century Michigan, amateur archaeologists uncovered a trove of artifacts that seemed to rewrite religious history: clay tablets inscribed with what appeared to be ancient Hebrew script, copper weapons marked with Christian crosses, and even figures resembling biblical prophets. These so-called Michigan relics surfaced in the late 1800s, sparking fierce debate. Were they proof of an ancient Near Eastern presence in pre-Columbian America, or an elaborate forgery designed to capitalize on the era's fascination with lost civilizations and religious mysteries? The relics first gained attention through James Scotford, a traveling salesman with a knack for discovering artifacts in farm fields, often with suspiciously convenient timing. His finds, later championed by a Presbyterian minister named Daniel Soper, included over 3,000 objects, many depicting scenes eerily reminiscent of Old Testament stories. One tablet showed a figure resembling Moses holding stone tablets, while another bore a crude crucifixion scene. If authentic, these artifacts would suggest that Semitic peoples, possibly even early Christians, had reached North America centuries before European colonization. The implications were staggering, promising to upend conventional narratives about the continent's history. But skepticism arose almost immediately. Professional archaeologists noted glaring inconsistencies. The Hebrew script mixed characters from different historical periods, some borrowed directly from modern textbooks. The ancient copper tools showed no signs of age-related corrosion, and the artifact's artistic style leaned heavily on 19th-century Sunday school illustrations rather than genuine ancient iconography. Even more damning, witnesses came forward claiming they'd seen Scotford and Soper manufacturing the relics in a barn, using basic engraving tools and homemade acids to simulate patina. By the early 20th century, most scholars had dismissed the Michigan relics as an outright hoax, yet the story doesn't end there. A small but vocal group of researchers insist some relics defy easy explanation. A handful of the tablets, they argue, exhibit peculiar mineral deposits consistent with long-term burial, and a few inscriptions use obscure Phoenician letter forms unlikely to have been known by 19th century forgers. Could some artifacts be genuine, accidentally mixed in with Scotford's fakes, or did the hoaxers simply get lucky with a few convincing pieces? The Michigan relics remain a cautionary tale about the allure of rewriting history and the human tendency to see what we want to believe. Whether elaborate fraud or misguided passion project, they reflect an era when archaeology was still finding its footing, and the line between discovery and deception was often blurry. Today, these objects gather dust in museum storage rooms, but their legacy lingers, reminding us that every artifact tells two stories, one about the past and another about the people desperate to interpret it. Deep in a burial mound along the Little Tennessee River in 1889, railroad engineer John W. Emmett unearthed a small piece of slate that would spark debates for over a century, the Bat Creek Stone. Roughly the size of a palm, this unassuming artifact bears a row of mysterious markings that some researchers insist are ancient Paleo-Hebrew script. If genuine, it could suggest Semitic explorers or traders reached North America long before Columbus, potentially rewriting early American history. But like so many disputed relics, this stone sits at the crossroads of archaeology, mythology, and outright skepticism. The inscription first gained attention in the 1960s when archaeologist Cyrus Thomas published it as Cherokee. But decades later, linguist Cyrus Gordon made a bombshell claim. The letters weren't indigenous at all. He identified them as Paleo-Hebrew, specifically reading the phrase for Judea, or for the Jews. Suddenly, the stone transformed from a local curiosity to a potential smoking gun for pre-Columbian transatlantic contact. The implications were staggering. Could Phoenician or Israelite sailors, renowned ancient seafarers, have crossed the ocean and interacted with Native American cultures? Proponents point to similarities between the stone's script and inscriptions found in the Near East, particularly from the 1st century. Some even link it to the legendary lost tribes of Israel, suggesting displaced communities might have carried their language to distant shores. But critics have torn into these claims with equal fervor. The stone's excavation lacked proper documentation. Emmett had a history of questionable finds, and the dig site was later revealed to be strewn with Civil War-era debris. Skeptics argue the markings could be Cherokee syllabary or even random scratches misinterpreted through wishful thinking. When the Smithsonian re-examined the stone in 2005, their scientists concluded the inscription was likely added in modern times, noting the crisp edges showed no weathering consistent with centuries of burial. Yet even this hasn't settled the debate. Defenders counter that the stone was cleaned aggressively after discovery, potentially erasing signs of aging. What makes the Bat Creek Stone so compelling isn't just the script, it's the context. Found alongside wooden ear spools and skeletal remains in a burial mound, it wasn't an isolated anomaly. Nearby sites have yielded other curious artifacts, like the Thruston tablet with its enigmatic glyphs, hinting at a broader tradition of inscription in the region. Could these markings reflect fleeting contact with overseas visitors, or were they independent developments? The stone's defenders highlight the presence of ancient copper mines around the Great Lakes, suggesting Mediterranean traders might have ventured there for resources, leaving fragments of their culture behind. Yet without corroborating evidence, shipwrecks, tools, or DNA traces, the Bat Creek Stone remains an outlier, caught between history and speculation. It's a reminder of how easily artifacts can become Rorschach tests, reflecting our own biases and desires more than objective truth. Whether it's a misread Cherokee message, an elaborate hoax, or a genuine trace of forgotten explorers, this small Tennessee stone forces us to confront how little we truly know about the winding paths of human migration and how much history might still be hiding in plain sight. In the mid-19th century, a Brazilian plantation worker made a claim that should have rewritten history. He allegedly uncovered a stone slab near the Paraíba River etched with strange symbols resembling ancient Phoenician script. Known as the Paraíba Inscription, this artifact's translation sent shockwaves through academic circles. According to early interpretations, the text described a group of Canaanite sailors separated from a Phoenician trading fleet, blown off course by storms, who then landed on Brazil's shores around 500 BC. If authentic, this would place Mediterranean seafarers in South America over 1,000 years before the Vikings reached Newfoundland. But almost as quickly as it appeared, the stone vanished, leaving behind a trail of doubt, debate, and unanswered questions. The inscription story begins in 1872, when it was reportedly copied by a local scholar before the original was lost or destroyed. The translated text spoke of maritime misfortune, with lines like, "We are sons of Canaan, 12 ships sailed together, but we were separated by the hand of Baal." Phoenicians were legendary seafarers known to have circumnavigated Africa and possibly reached the British Isles for tin. Could they have crossed the Atlantic too? Proponents argue the linguistic details align too closely with known Phoenician grammar and vocabulary to be a modern fake. They point to the use of archaic words and phrasing consistent with inscriptions found in Lebanon and Carthage. Even the stone's description, dark basalt with weathered carvings, matched artifacts from Phoenician sites. Yet skepticism runs deep. The inscription surfaced during a period of intense interest in pre-Columbian transatlantic contact, just as theories about lost tribes of Israel and ancient global explorers captivated the public. No physical stone was ever examined by experts. All analyzers rely on copied text, making verification impossible. Critics highlight glaring red flags. The inscription's discoverer had no training in ancient languages, and the text contains oddities like mixed letter forms from different Phoenician eras. Some scholars suggest it might have been inspired by a popular 19th century novel featuring Phoenician adventurers, blending fiction with opportunistic myth-making. The most damning blow came from linguistics. While the inscription uses genuine Phoenician words, their arrangement and syntax raise eyebrows. Phrases mirror 19th century biblical translations rather than authentic ancient patterns, as if someone cobbled together fragments from a textbook. Even the mention of 12 ships feels suspiciously symbolic, a number tied to mythological tropes, not historical Phoenician fleets. Without the original stone, there's no way to test the inscription's age or authenticity, leaving it suspended in a limbo between artifact and legend. But what if the truth lies somewhere in between? Could the Paraíba inscription be a distorted memory of real contact, passed down through generations and later etched onto stone by someone unaware of its origins? Similarities between Phoenician and indigenous Brazilian boat designs have been noted, and some DNA studies show faint genetic links between Amazonian tribes and ancient Mediterranean populations. These threads are tantalizing but inconclusive, woven more from coincidence than evidence. The Paraíba inscription endures as a cautionary tale about the allure of lost histories. Whether hoax, miscommunication, or genuine relic, it reflects our timeless desire to connect distant cultures and the risks of seeing patterns where none may exist. For now, this phantom artifact reminds us that some mysteries aren't just about solving the past, but understanding why we so desperately want to believe them. High above the Mexican city of Toluca stands the ancient pyramid of Calixtlahuoca, a site that yielded one of archaeology's most perplexing finds, a collection of artifacts utterly foreign to Mesoamerica. Among the ruins of this 15th century Matlatzinca structure, excavators uncovered objects that seemed plucked from distant continents. a terracotta head with distinct Roman features, and a small bronze figurine resembling traditional Chinese statuary. These weren't just stylistic coincidences, they were cultural anomalies buried centuries before European or Asian contact with the Americas. How did these objects cross oceans long thought impassable by pre-modern civilizations? The answer might rewrite our understanding of global trade routes or reveal how easily history can deceive us. Take the Roman-style head first. With its tight curls and classical beard, the sculpture bears an uncanny resemblance to second-century portraits of emperors like Marcus Aurelius. Found in a sealed archaeological layer, its antiquity is hard to dispute. Some scholars argue it's evidence of transatlantic contact, perhaps via a Roman ship blown off course by Atlantic currents, a phenomenon documented in later centuries. Others propose a more circuitous route. The head could have traveled through Viking traders who might have acquired Mediterranean goods in Europe before carrying them westward to North America, where they entered indigenous trade networks stretching into Mexico. The timing aligns roughly with Norse activity in Newfoundland, but the leap from Canada to central Mexico remains speculative. Then there's the Chinese figurine, a tiny bronze Buddha-like figure seated in meditation. Known as the Tekaxic Calixtlahuoca bell, this artifact reportedly matched Song dynasty metalwork from the 12th century, predating any known contact between China and Mesoamerica. Could Chinese maritime technology have reached farther than historians assumed? Records from the Ming dynasty describe vast treasure fleets sailing as far as East Africa under Admiral Zheng He, but there's no evidence they crossed the Pacific. Skeptics counter that the figurine might be a colonial-era import, misplaced into older strata during construction or excavation. Yet recent metallurgical analysis shows its alloy composition differs from post-Columbian artifacts, hinting at an older origin. These finds gain even more intrigue when viewed alongside similar anomalies: Roman coins in Okinawa, Olmec jade resembling Chinese carvings, and the Fuente Magna bowl's Mesopotamian script in Bolivia. Together, they sketch a tantalizing possibility that ancient trade networks were far more extensive than surviving records show. Maritime archaeologists point to reconstructions of ancient ships capable of long ocean voyages, while genetic studies reveal traces of unexpected human migrations like Polynesian Diné in South America. Perhaps these artifacts aren't outliers but fragments of forgotten connections, severed by time or catastrophe. But the Calixtlahuoca discoveries also warn us of history's pitfalls. The Roman head's excavation in the 1930s lacked modern documentation, leaving room for doubt. The Chinese figurine's exact find spot remains disputed, with some alleging it was planted. Even if genuine, both artifacts could represent rare accident objects carried by a handful of travelers rather than proof of sustained contact. After all, one swallow doesn't make a summer, and two artifacts don't rewrite global trade maps. What lingers, though, is the bigger question these objects force us to confront. Why do we resist the idea of ancient globalization? For centuries, Western academia dismissed pre-Columbian transoceanic contact as impossible, clinging to narratives of isolated civilizations. Yet each anomalous find chips away at that assumption, revealing a past where the world's edges might have been far closer than we thought. Whether the Calixtlahuoca artifacts are smoking guns or red herrings, they challenge us to look beyond textbook boundaries, to imagine a history where a Roman trader's keepsake could end up in a Mexican pyramid, or a Chinese pilgrim's charm might cross an ocean we once believed was uncrossable. Buried deep in the peat bogs of Somerset, England, archaeologists uncovered an artifact that rewrote the timeline of ancient trade, a 4,000-year-old arrow perfectly preserved by the oxygen-starved mud. But what made this discovery extraordinary wasn't just its age or condition, it was the wood itself. Analysis revealed the arrow shaft was crafted from viburnum, a hardy shrub native not to the British Isles but to the Iberian Peninsula, hundreds of miles away in what's now Spain and Portugal. Known as the sweet track arrow, this simple hunting tool hints at a staggering possibility that Neolithic Europeans were connected by trade networks spanning farther than anyone imagined, centuries before the rise of metal tools or written language. The arrow was found along the Sweet Track, an ancient wooden pathway built around 3800 BC to navigate the swampy terrain. The viburnum wood's presence raises urgent questions. Did Iberian travelers journey north, bringing materials with them? Or did British communities voyage south, returning with foreign resources? Both scenarios challenge the traditional view of Neolithic societies as isolated groups focused solely on subsistence. The arrow's craftsmanship offers clues. Its design matches local styles, suggesting it was made in Britain by someone familiar with regional techniques but using imported materials. This wasn't just a lost traveler's stray arrow, it was a deliberate fusion of distant resources and local knowledge. Consider the logistics. Transporting wood across such distances in an era before wheels or pack animals would have required staggering effort. Some theorists propose coastal routes, with early sailors hugging the Atlantic shoreline in dugout canoes, trading goods like flint, amber, and now apparently high-quality wood. Others point to overland networks where materials pass through countless hands along rivers and trails. The viburnum's durability makes sense for arrows. It's flexible yet tough, resistant to snapping under tension. To Neolithic hunters, it might have been worth the arduous journey or barter, but there's another layer to this mystery. The Sweet Track arrow wasn't alone. Nearby excavations uncovered other foreign materials, including Baltic amber and Cornish tin, suggesting Somerset was a hub in a vast exchange system. These finds paint a picture of a connected Europe where ideas, goods, and people moved with surprising fluidity. The viburnum arrow isn't just an outlier, it's part of a pattern we're only beginning to recognize. Could this arrow also hint at forgotten migrations? Genetic studies reveal ancient Britons shared DNA markers with Iberian populations, supporting theories of prehistoric movement between the regions. Perhaps the wood traveled with migrants carrying saplings or finished goods as they settled new lands. Or maybe it symbolizes something even deeper, a shared cultural memory where distant communities maintained ties across generations, trading not just goods but traditions. The Sweet Track arrow forces us to rethink the boundaries of the ancient world. 4 millennia ago, someone held this arrow, unaware it would become a message across time, proof that even in an age without maps or money, humanity's drive to explore, trade, and connect was already written into the grain of the wood. In the sun-baked ruins of ancient Mesopotamia, archaeologists uncovered a collection of figurines so bizarre they seemed to defy logic. Elongated humanoid bodies with almond-shaped eyes, slitted pupils, and unmistakably reptilian features. These Ubaid lizardmen, dating back over 7,000 years to the Ubaid period in modern-day Iraq, aren't just artistic oddities. They're cultural enigmas that challenge our understanding of early human symbolism. Why would a prehistoric society, thousands of years before writing or complex mythology, craft hundreds of these eerie, otherworldly figures? The answer might lie in the intersection of spirituality, environment, and the human mind's earliest attempts to explain the unexplainable. The figurines, often depicting both male and female forms, share hauntingly consistent details: shoulders hunched forward as if poised to strike, heads tilted upward with widened eyes, and bodies covered in scale-like patterns. Some clutch infants with the same reptilian traits, suggesting these weren't mere decorative pieces but representations of a deeper belief system. Unlike later Mesopotamian art, which glorified gods and kings, the Ubaid creations feel raw, almost primal, as if capturing something foundational to their worldview. One prevailing theory links them to water worship. The Ubaid culture thrived along the Tigris and Euphrates, where reptiles like snakes and lizards were both feared and revered as symbols of regeneration and danger. Could these figurines embody a deity bridging the human and natural worlds, a protector or warning tied to the rivers that gave life and could just as easily take it away. Then there's the unsettling precision of the designs. The slitted pupils and elongated skulls aren't crude exaggerations. They're anatomically specific, raising questions about inspiration. Some researchers speculate the figures reflect shamanic visions, where altered states of consciousness induced by rituals or plant-based substances might have conjured images of hybrid beings. Others propose a connection to ancestral memory, a cultural echo of pre-human reptilian forms encoded in myth. Even more controversially, fringe theorists argue the Ubaid lizardmen depict actual encounters with non-human intelligences, though mainstream archaeology dismisses this as sensationalism. Yet the most compelling clue might lie in their distribution. These figurines weren't isolated to one village. They've been found across Ubaid sites from Eridu to often in graves or domestic spaces. This wasn't fringe art, it was a shared cultural language. The lizard-like features might symbolize transformation, echoing the shedding of skin as a metaphor for rebirth, or perhaps served as talismans against the unseen forces governing fertility and death. What's undeniable is that these artifacts reveal a society already grappling with existential questions, weaving narratives to make sense of their place in a world where the line between human, animal, and divine was fluid. The Ubaid lizardmen don't just belong to archaeology, they're a mirror reflecting humanity's oldest impulses. Whether gods, symbols, or something stranger, they remind us that 7 millennia ago, people were already dreaming of beings beyond themselves, crafting figures that still stare back at us with alien, unblinking eyes, daring us to unravel the stories they've kept silent for ages. Hidden deep in the jungles of Costa Rica's Diquis Delta, nearly 300 perfectly spherical stones defy explanation, some as small as a baseball, others towering over 6 feet tall and weighing 16 tons. Known as the stone spheres of Costa Rica, these mysterious artifacts were crafted with astonishing precision, their surfaces smoothed to near perfection by a civilization that left no written records. First uncovered in the 1930s when United Fruit Company workers cleared land for banana plantations, the spheres immediately posed a puzzle. How and why would an ancient people invest such effort into shaping granite and gabbro into flawless orbs, only to scatter them across the landscape, some even tumbling into rivers miles from their original placements? The stone's craftsmanship is staggering. Archaeologists using laser scanning have found deviations of less than 2 millimeters in diameter on some spheres, a level of precision that rivals modern machining. Without metal tools, the makers likely used a combination of heating, cooling, and pecking with harder stones to shape them, a process that could have taken years for the largest examples. But their purpose remains hotly debated. Some theories suggest they were astronomical markers, aligned with celestial events like solstices. Others propose they served as territorial symbols for elite families, their size reflecting social status. Local legends even speak of the spheres as relics from the people of the stars, gifted with supernatural origins. Equally puzzling is their distribution. Originally placed in alignments near settlements and ceremonial sites, many were later moved, some by Spanish colonists who believed they contained gold, others by plantation workers who rolled them aside with heavy machinery. A few even vanished into private collections or were dynamited by treasure hunters, leaving craters in the archaeological record. This displacement makes it nearly impossible to reconstruct their original configurations, erasing clues about their true function. Recent research hints at a deeper cultural significance. The spheres appear exclusively in regions tied to the Kairakwi and Diquis cultures, flourishing between 400 and 1500 CE. Their placement near burial sites and plazas suggests a ritual role, perhaps representing celestial bodies in a cosmic worldview. Some spheres were arranged in geometric patterns mirroring constellations, while others may have marked sacred pathways. Yet the mystery endures, with no surviving oral histories or texts from the makers. the stones remain silent witnesses to a lost chapter of human ingenuity. Unlike Egypt's pyramids or Stonehenge, these artifacts lack the grandeur that attracts mythmakers, but their quiet perfection challenges us just as profoundly. How did a society without wheels or written language achieve such geometric mastery? And what compelled them to invest generations of labor into objects whose meaning we can only guess at? The stone spheres of Costa Rica don't just sit in the jungle, they roll through time, carrying questions we've yet to answer. Etched into the walls of a dark temple chamber in Dendera, Egypt, lies a carving that has fueled speculation for decades, a strange, bulb-like object cradled by a towering figure, with what appears to be a glowing filament inside and a snaking cable trailing off to a box. Known as the Dendera light, this 2,000-year-old relief is often held up as proof that the ancient Egyptians possessed advanced electrical technology. But is this really the case, or are we projecting modern interpretations onto an ancient artistic tradition? The controversial image appears in the crypts of the Temple of Hathor, a site dedicated to the goddess of sky, joy, and motherhood. At first glance, the carving seems shockingly out of place, a large, elongated shape resembling a modern light bulb, supported by a pillar-like figure often identified as the god Hair, symbolizing infinity. Inside the bulb, a wavy line evokes a filament, while a cord-like tendril connects it to a base that some argue resembles an ancient battery. Proponents of the ancient electricity theory point to experiments like the Baghdad battery, clay jars containing copper and iron, which, when filled with an acidic solution, could produce a small electric charge. Could the Dendera light depict a similar technology lost to time? Yet mainstream Egyptologists offer a more grounded explanation. They identify the bulb as a symbolic representation of a lotus flower cradling a serpent, an image tied to creation myths. In Egyptian cosmology, the lotus symbolizes rebirth, emerging from primordial waters, while the serpent represents transformation. The filament matches artistic conventions for depicting a snake's body, and the cable aligns with stylized portrayals of divine energy flowing between deities and sacred objects. Similar motifs appear in other temples, reinforcing the idea that this was religious iconography, not technical instruction. The debate hinges on perspective. Those who see the carving as a light bulb argue that ancient cultures often encoded practical knowledge in symbolic forms, disguising advanced techniques as myth to protect them from misuse. Skeptics counter that this is selective interpretation, ignoring the vast context of Egyptian art, where symbolic imagery dominates. Even the Baghdad battery's purpose is disputed. It may have been used for electroplating, medicine, or religious rituals rather than illumination. Without corroborating evidence like surviving electrical devices or clear written records, the Dendera light remains a riddle wrapped in symbolism. Perhaps the most compelling argument against the electricity theory is sheer practicality. If the Egyptians had electric lighting, why no soot-stained ceilings from oil lamps in their tombs? Why no mention in their meticulous records the temple's actual lighting methods? Polished metal mirrors reflecting sunlight through shafts are well documented. Yet the carving's uncanny resemblance to modern technology still captivates, reminding us that ancient artisans could envision forms that eerily anticipate future inventions. The Dendera light isn't just about electricity, it's about how we interpret the past. Do we see what's actually there, or what we want to believe? Whether sacred symbol or misunderstood technology, this enigmatic relief challenges us to question the line between ancient wisdom and modern imagination, and to wonder how much of history's brilliance might still be hidden in plain sight. Deep in the basement of the National Museum of Iraq sits an unassuming clay jar, roughly the size of a grapefruit, that has sparked one of archaeology's most electrifying debates. Known as the Baghdad battery, this 2,000-year-old artifact consists of a terracotta vessel, a copper cylinder, and an iron rod, all components that, when assembled, resemble a primitive galvanic cell. Discovered in 1936 near Rabu, just outside modern-day Baghdad, the object seems to defy its era. If filled with an acidic solution like vinegar or grape juice, it could theoretically produce a small electric current up to 2 volts. But was this really an ancient power source, or does its purpose lie somewhere far more unexpected? The battery theory gained traction in the 1940s when German archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig published his analysis, suggesting these devices might have been used for electroplating gold onto silver objects. The idea isn't as far-fetched as it sounds. Ancient Mesopotamian craftsmen were known for their intricate gold-plated artifacts, and experiments with replicas show the Baghdad battery could produce enough voltage to facilitate rudimentary plating. Even more intriguing, similar artifacts have surfaced across the region, hinting at a possible widespread, if poorly understood technology, but skeptics counter with compelling arguments. No wires or conductors have ever been found alongside these jars, and ancient texts make no mention of electrical applications. Alternative theories propose the vessels held sacred scrolls, with the iron and copper acting as protective casings for papyrus or parchment. Others suggest they were simple storage containers for precious oils or medicines, with the metal components serving as seals. The most plausible explanation might lie in symbolism rather than science. In Parthian culture, which flourished when the battery was made, iron and copper were often associated with divine duality, representing opposing forces in balance. Could these jars have been ritual objects, their materials chosen for spiritual rather than functional reasons? Experimentation has only deepened the mystery. While replicas can generate electricity, the current is weak and inconsistent, raising doubts about practical use. Even if the jars could produce a charge without evidence of linked devices or applications, their purpose remains speculative. Yet the Baghdad battery refuses to fade into obscurity. Its very existence challenges our assumptions about technological progress, forcing us to ask, how many other ancient innovations have we misunderstood or overlooked? Whether ritual relic, medical tool, or accidental battery, this humble clay jar embodies the enigma of history, a reminder that the past often hides its brightest sparks in the most ordinary objects. Among the rarest and most controversial artifacts in cartographic history lies the Paraíba map, a stunningly detailed parchment crafted in 1513 by Ottoman admiral and cartographer Paraíba. What makes this map extraordinary isn't just its age. It's the inclusion of coastlines and landmasses that defy conventional history. Most strikingly, it depicts Antarctica's northern edge without ice. This was 3 centuries before the frozen continent was officially discovered and millennia after it was last ice-free. How could a 16th century mapmaker have known what lay beneath polar ice sheets, and what forgotten sources might he have drawn from? The answers could rewrite our understanding of ancient exploration. Paraíba himself left clues. In marginal notes, he credited earlier maps from Columbus's voyages, Arabic geographers, and even the kings of old. Scholars have long debated what old meant. Were these references to medieval Arab traders or something far older? The map's accuracy is uncanny. It shows South America's eastern coast with precise longitude, a feat Europeans wouldn't achieve for another 200 years. Even more baffling, its rendition of Antarctica's Queen Maud Land aligns with subglacial topography revealed only by modern seismic surveys. The implication: whoever originally charted these lands did so when they were free of ice, a condition last seen over 6,000 years ago. Mainstream historians propose less radical explanations. Some suggest Paraíba pieced together his map from Portuguese and Spanish charts, which might have included lost expedition records. Others argue the Antarctica segment could be a distorted version of Patagonia or Australia, misinterpreted due to cartographic errors. Yet the coastline's contours match too closely to dismiss. Alternative theories point to ancient seafaring cultures like the Minoans or Phoenicians, whose advanced navigation skills are well documented. Could fragments of their knowledge have survived in Ottoman archives? The map's critics highlight missing details: no inland rivers or mountain ranges, just coastlines, as proof it wasn't based on first-hand surveys. But its defenders counter that coastal charts were often kept separate from topographic maps for navigational clarity. The real enigma isn't just the map's accuracy, but the idea that premodern civilizations might have possessed and lost geographic knowledge rivaling our own. Whether a miraculous preservation of ancient wisdom or an inspired guesswork of medieval minds, the Piri Reis map remains a haunting reminder of how much history might still lie buried beneath both ice and time. High in the remote mountains of China's Qinghai province, a discovery in 1938 would ignite one of archaeology's most enduring controversies: the Dropa stones. These bizarre, flat discs, roughly a foot in diameter and etched with minuscule spiral grooves, were reportedly found by Chinese archaeologist Kai Pu Te in a cave system alongside skeletal remains of unusually small, large-headed beings. According to later accounts, the stones contained microscopic hieroglyphs telling an incredible story. They were the records of an alien spacecraft that crashed in the region 12,000 years ago, leaving behind stranded extraterrestrial visitors who became the Dropa tribe. But as tantalizing as this narrative is, the truth behind these artifacts is shrouded in skepticism, hoaxes, and a frustrating lack of verifiable evidence. The most sensational claims about the stones emerged decades after their alleged discovery. In the 1960s, Russian researcher Dr. Vyacheslav Sazev published analyses suggesting the grooves were actually tiny, tightly packed inscriptions written in an unknown language. When translated by fringe theorists, the text supposedly described an alien race fleeing a dying planet, only to become marooned on Earth and hunted by local tribes. Some even linked the stones to modern reports of UFO sightings in the region, weaving them into a grand narrative of ancient extraterrestrial contact. But here's the problem: no credible institution has ever examined the original stones. The few photos that exist show objects resembling plain stone discs with mundane weathering patterns, nothing like the intricate carvings described. Even Kai Pu Te's excavation records are suspiciously absent from official Chinese archaeological archives, leading many to question whether he or the stones ever existed at all. Mainstream archaeology dismisses the Dropa stones as an elaborate hoax, possibly cobbled together from misinterpreted Neolithic artifacts and embellished by UFO enthusiasts. Similar discs, known as bai, have been found across China for centuries. Ceremonial jade objects used in ancient burial rituals, some with simple spiral patterns symbolizing the heavens. The hieroglyphs could easily be natural striations or later carvings added to drum up intrigue. Even the skeletal remains might have been misidentified. The Himalayas have long been home to small-statured ethnic groups, and the bones could belong to ordinary humans distorted by time and sensationalism. But the Dropa legend persists, fueled by the human fascination with cosmic mysteries. What makes the story so captivating isn't just the idea of alien visitors. It's the possibility that history's greatest secrets might still be hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone to uncover them. Whether the stones are genuine artifacts of a lost civilization, a modern fabrication, or simply mislabeled relics of Earth's own past, they serve as a reminder of how easily fact and fiction can intertwine when we stare too long into the unknown. In the end, the Dropa stones challenge us to ask not just what they might be, but why we're so eager to believe they're something extraordinary. Discovered in the depths of the Aegean Sea in 1901, the Antikythera mechanism is an artifact so advanced it seems to defy its own time. Found amidst the wreckage of a Roman-era cargo ship near the Greek island of Antikythera, this corroded bronze relic, roughly the size of a shoebox, was initially dismissed as a curiosity. But decades later, painstaking analysis revealed its true nature: a mind-bendingly complex mechanical computer built over 2,000 years ago, capable of predicting celestial events with astonishing precision. Its intricate system of interlocking gears, dials, and inscriptions didn't just track time. It mapped the movements of the sun, moon, and planets, predicted eclipses, and even accounted for irregularities in the moon's orbit. This wasn't just a tool, it was a miniature cosmos in a box, a testament to a level of technological sophistication that historians once believed impossible for its era. The mechanism's gears are its most stunning feature. Using 37 interlocking bronze cogs, some with teeth cut at precise angles to account for mathematical ratios, it modeled the erratic dance of celestial bodies centuries before Copernicus or Galileo. One gear even mimicked the moon's elliptical orbit, a phenomenon first mathematically described by Hipparchus of Rhodes, whose work may have inspired the device. The front face displayed a zodiac calendar, while the back featured dials for tracking the 4-year cycle of the ancient Olympic Games. To achieve this, its creators had to master advanced metallurgy, astronomy, and mechanical engineering, skills not seen again in Europe until the rise of medieval clockwork over 1,000 years later. Scholars now believe the Antikythera mechanism wasn't unique. Cicero's writings mention similar devices crafted by Archimedes, suggesting this was part of a broader tradition of Greek celestial mechanics lost to time. The shipwreck itself hints at its value. The vessel was likely carrying looted treasures from Greece to Rome when it sank, implying the mechanism was prized enough to transport across the empire. Yet its complexity raises haunting questions. How many other such devices existed, and what knowledge vanished when the libraries of Alexandria burned? Modern technology has peeled back the mechanism's secrets layer by layer. High-resolution X-ray scans in 2005 revealed previously hidden inscriptions, a user manual etched in tiny Greek letters, explaining how to operate its celestial predictions. Later 3D reconstructions showed it could even simulate the irregular motions of planets like Mars and Jupiter, using a clever system of offset gears to replicate their retrograde motion across the sky. These findings rewrite the history of technology, proving that the ancient world flirted with mechanical computation long before the Renaissance. The Antikythera mechanism forces us to confront a humbling truth: technological progress isn't always linear. Here was a civilization capable of creating machines rivaling 18th century clocks, yet that knowledge disappeared for millennia, buried beneath the waves of time. Whether a lone masterpiece or a glimpse of a lost technological age, this corroded bronze puzzle reminds us that history's brightest sparks often flicker in the dark, waiting centuries for someone to decipher their light. In the hushed archives of Yale University's Beinecke Library lies a book that has defied comprehension for centuries: the Voynich manuscript, a 240-page enigma penned in an alphabet no one can read, brimming with illustrations of plants that don't exist and celestial charts that follow no known astronomy. Discovered in 1912 by antiquarian Wilfred Voynich, this lavishly illustrated codex, likely crafted between 1400 and 1438, is written in a script so cryptic that even wartime codebreakers and artificial intelligence have failed to crack it. Every page pulses with questions: who created this elaborate tome? Were its unknown authors documenting lost knowledge, crafting an elaborate hoax, or preserving secrets too dangerous to write plainly? The manuscript's visuals only deepen the mystery. One section overflows with bizarre botanical drawings: plants with bulbous roots, leaves like tentacles, and stems twisting in impossible ways. Some resemble distorted versions of real herbs, while others seem plucked from a fever dream. Another chapter swims with nude women bathing in interconnected green pools, their bodies oddly proportioned, the liquid possibly symbolizing alchemical elixirs or imaginary anatomy. Then there are the astrological diagrams, concentric circles of stars with zodiac symbols, but arranged in patterns that match no known medieval cosmology. The most haunting pages are covered in dense, flowing text around 30,000 characters in total, with a linguistic structure that suggests real language, yet resists all attempts at translation. Over the years, theories about the manuscript's origin have spiraled as wildly as its inked vines. Some scholars insist it's a coded scientific treatise, perhaps by 13th century polymath Roger Bacon, hiding heresies about medicine or astronomy from the church. Others argue it's a Renaissance-era fraud concocted to deceive collectors with faux ancient gibberish. Recent carbon dating, however, confirms the vellum and ink are genuine to the early 15th century, complicating the hoax theory. More fringe hypotheses propose extraterrestrial origins or secret alchemical ciphers, but the most compelling clue might lie in the manuscript's quire numbers, small markings in a dialect of Occitan, a medieval Romance language hinting at a possible connection to southern France or northern Italy. Modern technology has peeled back layers without yielding answers. In 2014, computational linguists applied AI algorithms trained on hundreds of languages, hoping the manuscript's text would align with known linguistic patterns. The result, the script structure does resemble natural language, but no known tongue on Earth. Spectral imaging revealed faint traces of earlier writing beneath some illustrations, suggesting the parchment might have been scraped and reused, a common practice for precious materials. But if the original text held clues, they're now ghosts beneath the surface. Perhaps the greatest lesson of the Voynich manuscript isn't about cracking codes, but about the limits of human knowledge. Here is a book that has survived wars, fires, and 6 centuries of scrutiny, yet guards its secrets as fiercely as the day it was penned. It dares us to admit that some mysteries resist solving, that history can still hold artifacts so strange they refuse to fit into our tidy narratives. Whether a lost herbal encyclopedia, an elaborate cipher, or something far stranger, the manuscript endures as a riddle wrapped in vellum, reminding us that the past's most tantalizing whispers are sometimes the ones we'll never quite hear. Among the treasures of Egypt's Saqqara necropolis rests an unassuming wooden artifact that has sparked debates spanning centuries: the Saqqara bird. Carved from sycamore wood and dating back to roughly 200 BCE, this delicate model resembles a falcon in flight, its wings swept back as if gliding on an unseen current. At first glance, it might pass for a child's toy or a ritual offering, but a closer look reveals features that have led some to a radical claim. This could be a scale model of an ancient aircraft, proof that the Egyptians understood principles of aerodynamics millennia before the Wright brothers. The aviation theory hinges on the bird's uncanny design. Unlike traditional bird carvings from the period which emphasize static, symbolic poses, the Saqqara bird's wings are sharply angled with a flattened fuselage-like body and a distinct tail fin, features that mirror modern aircraft more than avian anatomy. In the 1970s, aviation engineer Simon Sanderson tested a replica in a wind tunnel, finding that with a small added stabilizer, it could achieve stable glide patterns. Fringe theorists seized on this, suggesting the artifact might represent a forgotten glider or even a ceremonial model of advanced technology lost to time. Some go further, linking it to the winged sun motif in Egyptian iconography, interpreting it as evidence of mythological flight or even extraterrestrial influence. Yet mainstream Egyptologists offer a far more grounded explanation. The bird was discovered near a temple dedicated to Horus, the falcon-headed god of the sky, and likely served a ritual purpose. Ancient Egyptians frequently crafted votive offerings resembling animals associated with deities, ibises for Thoth, cats for Bastet, and this could simply be a representation of Horus meant to carry prayers skyward. The absence of any corroborating evidence for ancient aviation further undermines the aircraft theory. No other aerodynamic artifacts have been found, and Egyptian texts never mention flight beyond mythical symbolism. Even the bird's tail fin matches the style of papyrus reeds commonly used in divine headdresses, reinforcing its connection to religious iconography rather than engineering. The most compelling counter to the aviation hypothesis lies in the artifact's craftsmanship. Unlike later Greek or Roman mechanical models, the Saqqara bird shows no signs of movable parts or technical sophistication. Its wings are solid, carved from a single piece of wood, and there's no indication it was ever intended to function as anything more than a static offering. Even the supposed aerodynamic performance falls short under scrutiny without the modern stabilizer Sanderson added. The original struggles to maintain lift, suggesting any resemblance to aircraft is coincidental. What makes the Saqqara bird fascinating isn't just its design. It's how effortlessly it bridges the gap between myth and misunderstanding. For some, it's a tantalizing glimpse of lost knowledge. For others, a reminder of how easily human creativity can be misread across millennia. Whether sacred object or artistic fluke, this wooden relic challenges us to separate our modern imaginations from the ancient world's realities, and to wonder how many other artifacts might be waiting for us to project our dreams onto them. Buried deep in the rocky outcrops near London, Texas, not the British capital, but a small town in the Lone Star State, a peculiar discovery in the 1930s continues to baffle both geologists and historians. Known as the London Hammer, this seemingly ordinary tool was found encased in a chunk of ancient limestone, its wooden handle partially fossilized and its iron head fused seamlessly into the rock. The hammer itself is unremarkable in design, resembling something a 19th century blacksmith might craft. But here's the twist: the rock surrounding it dates back over 100 million years, a time when dinosaurs still roamed the earth. How could a man-made object end up trapped in stone from an era long before humans existed? This isn't just an oddity, it's a mystery that challenges our understanding of time, geology, and possibly even human history. The hammer's discovery was accidental. In 1936, a local couple hiking along Red Creek stumbled upon a loose rock with a peculiar protrusion. When they cracked it open, the hammer was revealed inside, its head made of an unusual iron alloy with traces of chlorine, suggesting advanced metallurgy not typical of early modern tools. Even more puzzling was the wood of the handle, which had undergone a process called carbonization, turning to coal over immense periods. Mainstream geology insists the hammer must be much younger, arguing that mineral-rich water could have cemented it into ancient rock over centuries. But critics of this theory point to the hammer's seamless integration into the stone, showing no gaps or cracks where it might have been inserted later. The rock itself shows no signs of disturbance, as if the hammer had been there all along. Skeptics propose alternative explanations, some more plausible than others. One idea is that the hammer dates back to the 19th century, and the ancient rock is actually a concretion, a hard, compact mass formed around the object by mineral deposits in a relatively short time. Concretions can form surprisingly quickly under the right conditions, especially in iron-rich environments. Others suggest the hammer could have been left behind by an unknown civilization, one that existed far earlier than we currently recognize. There's even a fringe theory proposing that time itself might be more fluid than we think, with objects slipping between epochs under extraordinary circumstances. Yet the most compelling argument against the hammer's anomalous age comes from metallurgical analysis. Modern testing reveals the iron lacks the slag and impurities typical of ancient forged tools, suggesting it wasn't crafted by early humans or lost civilizations. But this doesn't fully explain how the wood became fossilized or how the hammer became so perfectly embedded in stone. The debate often circles back to Occam's razor. The simplest explanation is usually correct. But in this case, even the simplest explanations leave gaps in the story. Regardless of where you stand on the London hammer's origins, it remains a fascinating enigma. Whether a geological fluke, a misdated artifact, or something far stranger, it forces us to question how easily our assumptions about the past can be upended by a single, stubborn object. After all, history isn't just written in books, it's buried in the rocks beneath our feet, waiting for someone to crack them open and find the stories hidden inside. In the rugged desert hills of California's Coso Mountains, a discovery in 1961 would become the crown jewel of so-called out-of-place artifacts, a relic so baffling it seemed to defy the very laws of time. Known as the Coso artifact, this strange object was found encased inside a solid geode, a nodule of hardened clay and minerals that typically takes hundreds of thousands of years to form. But when rockhounds Wallace Lane, Virginia Maxey, and Mike Mikesell cracked it open, they didn't find crystals or fossils. Instead, nestled inside was what appeared to be a spark plug, a mechanical device that, by all conventional wisdom, shouldn't exist in a formation dating back to the Pleistocene epoch. At first glance, the artifact seemed like undeniable proof of advanced technology in the distant past. The object's core consisted of a ceramic cylinder housing a magnetic metal rod, surrounded by a hexagonal shell that bore an eerie resemblance to early 20th century spark plugs. Speculation spiraled. Was this evidence of an ancient, forgotten civilization with knowledge of electricity? Or could it be a remnant of time travelers leaving behind a piece of their machinery in Earth's deep past? The geode's age only deepened the mystery. Initial X-ray analysis suggested the nodule was at least 500,000 years old, a time when Homo sapiens hadn't even evolved. But as with many such artifacts, the truth turned out to be far more mundane yet no less fascinating. Further investigation by skeptics and scientists revealed the spark plug wasn't ancient at all. The object was identified as a champion spark plug, a common automotive part from the 1920s, likely from a Ford Model T or similar vehicle. The geode, it turned out, wasn't a natural formation but a concretion, a hardened lump of minerals that can form much more rapidly around objects, especially in environments rich in iron and clay. The ancient date was debunked when geologists pointed out that concretions can form in mere decades under the right conditions, particularly in desert regions where mineral-laden water evaporates quickly. Yet this hasn't stopped the Coso artifact from becoming a legend among fringe theorists. Its story taps into a deeper human fascination, the desire to uncover evidence that upends our understanding of history. For some, it remains a symbol of how easily mainstream science dismisses anomalies. For others, it's a cautionary tale about misinterpretation and the seductive power of a good mystery. What makes the Coso artifact endure isn't its authenticity, but the questions it forces us to ask. How do we distinguish between genuine anomalies and ordinary objects misplaced by time? And why are we so drawn to the idea that our past might be far stranger than we've been taught? In the end, the spark plug in the stone serves as a reminder that not every mystery is a doorway to a lost world. Sometimes it's just a rusty relic with a really good story. But the fact that we're still talking about it decades later proves that sometimes the most enduring artifacts aren't made of metal or stone, they're made of wonder. Along the banks of the Mureș River in Romania, buried beneath a layer of sediment believed to be 250,000 years old, workers uncovered an object that shouldn't exist, a wedge-shaped piece of aluminum, pitted and weathered, yet unmistakably manufactured. Known as the Ayod wedge, this artifact was found in 1974 alongside mastodon bones, placing it in a geological era long before humans supposedly mastered metalworking. Aluminum doesn't occur naturally in pure form. It requires an industrial process not developed until the 19th century. So how did a refined metal object end up encased in prehistoric Earth? The answer might lie somewhere between wartime chaos and geological anomalies, but the truth remains as elusive as the artifact itself. At first glance, the wedge's design suggests functionality. Roughly 8 inches long with a concave groove along one side, it resembles a mechanical component, perhaps a footplate from heavy machinery or even part of an aircraft landing gear. This observation led some researchers to propose a 20th century origin. Romania saw intense aerial activity during World War II, and the wedge's composition, an alloy of aluminum, copper, zinc, and silicon, matches materials used in German and Allied aircraft. Could it have fallen from a damaged plane, sinking into river sediments where minerals gradually coated it, giving the illusion of great age? Proponents of this theory point to similar cases where modern objects became embedded in rock formations surprisingly quickly. Yet the geological context complicates things. The wedge was reportedly excavated from a layer of compacted clay and sand, undisturbed by human activity and consistent with Pleistocene-era deposits. Mastodon bones found nearby underwent rigorous testing, confirming their antiquity. If the wedge shares that stratum, its presence defies conventional timelines. Even more puzzling, analysis revealed a thin oxide layer on the metal, suggesting prolonged exposure to oxygen, something unlikely to develop in just a few decades. The alloy itself adds another wrinkle. While similar to aviation materials, its exact blend doesn't match known wartime production records. Skeptics argue the wedge's discovery lacks proper documentation. The initial dig was conducted by construction workers, not archaeologists, and the artifact's exact position in the sediment layer remains disputed. Some geologists propose it might have been driven deep into older layers by modern machinery, creating a false association with ancient fossils. Others note that aluminum can corrode rapidly in certain environments, potentially accelerating the formation of oxide layers that mimic age. But what if the wedge isn't man-made at all? A fringe but fascinating theory suggests it could be a natural metallic concretion, shaped by geologic pressures and chemical reactions. While pure aluminum is vanishingly rare in nature, unusual mineral formations can sometimes mimic manufactured objects. The problem, no known natural process explains the wedge's symmetrical design or alloy composition. The Ayod wedge lingers in the limbo between artifact and anomaly, a riddle wrapped in patina. Whether it's a wartime relic misplaced by time, evidence of an unknown ancient technology, or simply a geological oddity, it challenges us to question the boundaries of history. After all, the past is full of quiet enigmas, objects that refuse to fit neatly into our timelines, waiting for someone to uncover their stories. From the main penny whispering of Vikings in pre-Columbian America to the Antikythera mechanism's celestial calculations millennia ahead of its time, these 25 artifacts aren't just curiosities, they're cracks in the foundation of history as we know it. Each one forces us to confront uncomfortable questions. Were ancient civilizations more connected than we ever imagined? Did knowledge rise and fall in cycles lost to time? Or are we simply misreading the fragments left behind, projecting our own assumptions onto the past? The Roman head in Mexico, the Okinawan coins, the Fuente Magna bowls, Mesopotamian script, none of these fit neatly into textbooks, yet they exist stubborn and unexplained. Consider what binds them together. The Dropa stones and the Baghdad battery suggest technologies or cultural exchanges we can't yet explain. The Piri Rise map and the Takaxik-Kalixtlahuoka artifacts hint at geographic knowledge that defies the timeline of exploration. Even hoaxes like the Michigan relics or the Acambaro figures reveal something deeper: our timeless desire to reshape history, whether through deception or discovery. These objects remind us that history isn't a fixed narrative but a puzzle with missing pieces, where every find can upend what we thought we knew. But here's the real takeaway: the past is far stranger, messier, and more wondrous than any classroom lesson. Maybe the Kensington runestone is a medieval SOS, or maybe it's a clever fake. Perhaps the Saqqara bird was a ritual offering, or perhaps it's a glimpse of aerodynamic principles forgotten for ages. The uncertainty is what makes these mysteries thrilling. They invite us to stay curious, to question, and to keep digging, sometimes literally. So what's your favorite enigma? Drop a comment below whether you're team ancient astronauts or misplaced Vikings. We want to hear which artifact blew your mind. And if you're hungry for more deep dives into history's biggest puzzles, hit subscribe. The past isn't done surprising us yet, and we're just getting started.